Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Ron McKinney with Potted Photo. We have here Andrew Bowen with us. He is the Potted Dance Photo Competition winner in the teen category. So we're going to talk about that image that he took as a studio portrait shot, and some of his other images as well, as he had another image hitting top 10 in the teen category and two more in the top 10 in studio category. So welcome, Andrew. Can you introduce yourself to those of us who may not know about you?
So my name's Andrew Bowen. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. I've been seriously working with dancers now for about 3.5 years. I was just talking to a friend and sort of realizing both how long it seems I've been doing this, almost like it's been part of what I've been doing for a long, long time. And then realizing that it hasn't been very long at all. That my first serious shot done with the intent that it was going to be good, not just, yeah, I hope this turns out, was August of 2018. So not that long at all.
Right.
And last year, I niched my studio down to be exclusively dance. We do seniors. Most of them are dancers that are seniors that come through here. Occasionally you pick up somebody else who's like a friend of a dancer, but we do a little bit of headshot work outside of dance, but the website and everything is really hyper focused on dance. The Instagram feed is all dance, and it's really what feeds me creatively, and it's where I'm at my happiest. So just decided that that's where I really needed to focus my energy.
Okay, now you said you started with dance 3.5 years ago, but I don't quite believe that you only started in photography 3.5 years ago.
Oh, no.
So talk a little bit about that. Like your beginnings as a photographer, and do you have your own studio, or do you rent a studio? What do you do with that?
So photography started back in middle school. Sort of a hobbyist thing. I learned to shoot on my dad's Kodak Retina 2, which was this super cool camera. And then I was so upset when he was cleaning house. He said, "I don't need this," and he threw it in the garbage. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." It is this wonderful little piece of German engineering with a little micro bellows on it that came out. It was like an old timey camera that you could move, carry around. And but that's what I learned on. And then I did landscape and cityscape work when I was in college in Pittsburgh, and then of course when we had our daughter, we had to keep taking more and more pictures because none of the relatives lived nearby. Started to learn how to shoot digital on a Sony Mavica. It recorded on a 3.5-inch hard floppy disk. Right, you could put 20 pictures on a 1 megabyte floppy disk, and it shot 640 by 320 or something like that.
Right.
And but getting actually serious about photography and really learning started about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we lost our second child due to birth defects.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. And at the time I was a engineering manager for Silicon Valley companies, and I was spending most of my time either on the road or recovering from being on the road and working, sort of stupid Silicon Valley hours. And when you kind of go through that, you say, okay, I need to shift gears. I got out of the management side of things, and sort of started thinking about well, what am I really doing? and what do I want to be doing? When I started my engineering career, the companies that bought the machines that from the companies I worked for they were solving big problems like finding oil and gas without drilling test holes in the earth and
Right.
simulating the nuclear stockpile without blowing bombs up underground. Right. And that like went away almost overnight when PCs got to be fast enough. And while I was working with a company that sold into those markets still, that wasn't why you woke up in the morning anymore.
Right.
It was, what does the Call of Duty guy want? Right. And I never cared. I helped build Xbox. I helped build PlayStation 3, never owned either of them because it's just not what interests me.
Right.
And so I really had to find something that was worth all the time and worth the time I had left to be creative.
Yep.
And, you know, in engineering, I had a great career. I mean, I've got 20 something odd patents to my name and, you know, I mean, they're all assigned to the companies I worked in. So, but it, you know, got to work on some great projects, worked with some amazing people. But I was losing interest for what it is that I was doing there.
Right.
And then I also, like so many of our friends around us were doing things, you know, we had, you know, teachers and nurses and social workers and stuff in our tight circle. And I'm like, yeah, I'm building video games, you know. And, you know, I say like, well, I just always love, you know, working with my camera. I always love, you know, and so I said, okay, if I'm going to do that, I need to be better than lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I need to be, you know, dang near 100%. You know, that somebody wants a picture, I know how I'm going to get it.
Right.
You know, and not be like, oh yeah, that worked out. Cool. You know, it's gonna be like, yeah, of course that worked out. And so I started learning. I was living in Austin at the time, and you know, as many members are aware, there's an amazing camera store in Austin. It was there when I was there with Precision Camera, and they were running some education, and I joined PPA and went to convention and took classes. And around that time, we ended up moving to North Carolina, went to East Coast school through Professional Photographers in North Carolina, and just kept learning. And like, in about 10 years ago is when I put up my professional shingle, you know, where I said like, okay, yeah, I'm reliable. I can take money for this. And of course, I look back at that stuff 10 years ago and go like, oh my God, I was so bad. It's like, no, there is none of that on my Instagram feed. There is none, you know, like whether it was dance or not, it would not be on my Instagram feed. I just look at that and go like, oh Lord, I really thought I was better than I was. And I'll probably do the same 10 years from now. I'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. You know. And like so many photographers, you know, when you start out, what are you going to do? I'm going to be a family and high school senior photographer, right? You know, it's like, well, you know, because I knew I wasn't going to be like putting babies in little wads of cloth and stuff like that.
Right,
you know, it's like, yeah, it's just not my jam. So I did sports, I did bar and bat mitzvahs, and I did no weddings. I had no interest in doing weddings. Had one grandma get upset with me on behalf of her daughter because I don't do weddings. Like, you don't want me to do your wedding. And you know, so it was like about 6 years ago, I had this senior. She was you know, dance wasn't her whole life. It was just like a little part of her life, but she wanted a couple dance shots. And, of course, being stupid and naive, I was like, oh, well, sure, yeah, let's do that. And, back in my mind, it's like, oh, that's going to be the easy part, right? She wants pictures with her dog, and she's got a pile of, Chuck Converses, and, she had like 30, 40 pairs of cons that like we had to figure out, like, how are we going to do a shot with all these shoes. And the last thing on my mind was, I got to make her look good as a dancer. Right? Like, it was like, well, that's the easy part, right?
Right.
Right. And she says, well, one thing I want to do is my scorpion. I'm like, you're what? And she yanks her foot over her head, and, and like awful pose to shoot. Right. And it's like, it gets crotchy super easy. And then the other angles aren't quite as interesting. We're like, I'm just trying to figure this out. Like, okay, well, you tell me it's kind of this shape, but that doesn't work well. And like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And, thankfully, when we kind of like moved on to some other stuff, and we got some stuff she was happy with, but it was way easier getting her dog to smile than it was to get a good shot, right? That really looked good. And of course, the more portraity the pictures that we did were, the easier they were for me, because that was my wheelhouse, right? Like, oh, I just want something really thoughtful, like looking out the window, soft light. It's like, okay, yeah, great. Yeah, you're wearing a dance skirt, but it's really a portrait. And, that was like the best picture of like all the dance ones. And so that's sort of the like, well, that can't happen again. Right. Not that she was necessarily going and telling all her dance friends what amazing dance pictures she got from me, but I never wanted it to be that kind of struggle again. Right. So, okay, well, let's start figuring this stuff out. And, I did a workshop with Rachel Neville, and, started doing, finding little bits and pieces. But I mean, as you're well aware, there wasn't a whole lot out there on working with dancers, right? And shy of becoming a dancer and a dance instructor, like learning soup to nuts to be a dancer, there really wasn't a lot there on posing and translating dance into photography. And so, I worked with Rachel, and then I did a 2-year mentorship with her as well. And, and then, just I haven't made it to the conference, but I will. But just learning from everybody, the community that we have here, on just really looking at things from different ways and figuring out how people do things, and talking with some of the amazing photographers that we have here, and the webinars and all that. That's been my education in this. And now when I have it, well, now they're all dancers, and I don't sit there wondering like, what are we going to do? It's more like, oh, you want to do something like that? Okay. How do you feel about this kind of lighting scheme? You want it to be like kind of really dark and moody, like, yeah, the deeper the shadows, the better. It's like, oh, I love you. It's like, and, and it's now much, it on one hand, 3 years, on the other hand, it feels like second nature. And so when we had moved to North Carolina, we had built more of a portrait studio. So the main shoot room was 22 feet wide and 25 feet deep with 12-foot ceilings. And I am so grateful we put 12-foot ceilings in that room.
The huge difference just from 10 feet to 12 feet.
Yeah. 12 feet was, I wanted 14 feet, but the cost of construction goes up massively when you go over 12 feet, at least in this state. where all the 2x4s have to become 2x6s, and you have to build a 2-layer structure in the wall and all this other stuff. And I was like, okay, 12's good. This summer we added on there was already a set of French doors at one end of the studio. And I was already finding myself sort of opening the French doors and moving out onto the patio to get more distance to the dancers, which works well, except for when it's pouring rain or freezing cold or swelteringly hot outside, which is a lot of days in North Carolina. And because either your camera fogs up when you take it outside, or you're getting wet, or you're freezing your dancer out because it's 30 degrees. So we actually built on another 20 feet studio. We knocked the wall out and an extended thing. So now the whole studio is about 40 feet long and about 22 feet wide. It's a little asymmetric. The new part's only 18 feet wide because we didn't want to have the massive cost of redefining the roof line. So we built within the old roof line, and that gave us 18 feet. So, and then we put a massive 7x8 window at the back end of that, because who doesn't love a massive window?
Exactly.
It's the largest window we could buy through the supplier. It's 8 feet tall and 7 feet wide.
Right.
So you can pretty much bust about any dance move within that shape if you're close enough to it.
Yeah.
And we whitewashed it so that I could put lights outside. So as long as it's not pouring rain, I can put a couple strobes outside, fire them through the whitewash, and it just glows and it's gorgeous. And
that's cool.
And even without the lights coming through it, it's a really cool, because it is all whitewashed, and just has a great texture to it, with like a little bit of runs to the whitewash on the glass.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's pretty cool. What was your, like, I know you had a lot of help by taking the Rachel Neville program. What was your biggest challenge in going from just a people portrait photographer to a dance portrait photographer?
Biggest challenge was learning the details of dance. I guess really early on, whether it was a conscious decision or just the way I'm wired, is I didn't want to have to rely on, oh yeah, we can't shoot that day because the person who actually knows how to tell you how to pose isn't available.
Right.
And so it was a foregone conclusion that if I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well, I need to know all the stuff that I didn't know at the time.
Yep.
Okay. And all the stuff that I didn't know, the very first shoot that went in 2018 was with Greensboro Ballet, actually. Swing for the fences right from the start. And they just didn't really have any good pictures on their website. And I said, I don't know from posing. I told them flat out, I said, I don't know from posing right now. I said, I'll light it amazingly, and my timing's pretty good, but I won't know whether it's a good dance shot or not. Right. And so the AD, she was there, like, no, softer hands, lift, and like, this is all playing into my ear, like, while we're doing this. And, I would have loved to have had like just a video of the whole day to go back and find everything, but I'm not that smart to have done that. And, but they're still using some of the pictures from there, and some of those pictures I still love flat out. I mean, there's some stuff that I did and I was like, oh yeah, I just cross-lit way too much stuff way too often. Right. It was like, my lights were like always at 2:30 and 9:30, right? And like, oh, you can put them other places, cool. And and so, most of that stuff was generally cross-lit, with Phil. But some of it was actually the right lighting for what we did for some of that stuff.
Mhm.
And then we did some really highly backlit silhouette work that was absolutely gorgeous. And that's been part of my repertoire since that day. I just love the I don't like them fully silhouetted. Right. I let some of the light wrap around, and I've just always loved that look where there's just enough detail that if you stare at it hard enough, you can see detail all the way through, even to the front.
Right.
But at first glance, it's black and white.
Yeah.
And so that's been part of my repertoire and style, like from day one, more or less. But yeah, it's been a lot of standing on the shoulders of giants and learning and sharing and figuring out things. And there's 7 of us that were in Rachel's last mentorship thing, and we're all still really close.
That's good.
And support each other, and we sit down about once a week just to catch up and see what's going on with each other. And most of them are also members of Padida, so
Yeah.
it's there's definitely crossover there. So it's not like, oh, I have my other learning group that's not Padida. It's just like we went through a crucible of doing a mentorship in the middle of COVID. That was
Yep.
that was interesting. It was interesting. It had a lot of challenges, but I continue to learn dance form and terminology, and it's kind of funny. It's like I don't think my terminology is so good. But sometimes the parents, you talk to the dancers as best as you can, and they're like, wow, you really know a lot of the terms. I don't know any of the terms. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, I still got a long way to go, because every now and then, like, you start using the terms, and then they go, oh, well, I'm going to do it, blah, 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 and you're like, what's that? Oh, that's when you do this. It's like, oh, cool, thanks, I just learned something new today. What's it called again? Yeah. And because sometimes you know what you want them to do, but you don't know the right word.
Right, exactly.
Right. And and so you start learning that. Probably for a great many of us that do this, we kind of had an idea of like, I can't define art, but I know what it is when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, oh, that's pretty. Oh, that's not as pretty. We hadn't internalized that, oh, it's because the turnout is better, or because the foot is better pointed. Right. And now we know that, oh, that's because you didn't turn your leg out. That's why it doesn't look as good.
Yep.
Right. And it's a continuous learning exercise of looking at what you do and how you coach each dancer. And sometimes you hit those little roadblocks with a dancer where you're trying to do something and you're like, you're coaching them, and then you try some other cue,
Mm-hmm.
So almost out of desperation, and it works, and you go, so I'll try to remember that one for next time, because
Right.
like that was gold.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's kind of jump into your pictures and talk about them a little bit. So I'm gonna share this screen here and pull up some of your pictures. And I'm gonna go to the top, actually.
So for those watching at home, I apologize. There is no behind the scenes footage or anything. I am horrible about doing it. I keep saying I need to have like some behind the scenes stuff from a shoot because it's great for marketing. And then my dancer arrives, we get excited about doing something, and then all that goes out the window. So I apologize.
Okay, so I'm pulling up these pictures here, and let's see. So this one here took, let's see, it took 8th place in our studio category. And so talk a little bit about it. In fact, you kind of made a decision not to do the cross lighting that you often talk about. You have the lighting coming from one side here, but not from the other.
Yeah, so, well, this is like done in 2020. I think we shot this in 2021. I think everything I entered was shot in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I'd long since learned that there were not just one place to put the lights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like the first thing Rachel said to me, like when she looked at my portfolio, she was like, we're going to teach you to put lights someplace else. And so the light here is almost definitely two 1x4 strips that are stacked on top of each other. The top one is angled in a little bit, so it's sort of like here and here.
Mm-hmm.
I do that a lot for like tall forms that you want light going all the way to the bottom.
Right.
The lights are actually the angled light is a little bit upstage from him, and the straight light is a little downstage.
Okay.
Not a ton, right? Which is what gets a lot of the light to that front leg. And it's what gets the really pretty light on his face too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we bring the light too far forward, and then we kind of just fill in all this shadow on his face. But I think part of like what sells it, in addition to his insane musculature and back that has muscles and tendons I didn't know a human being had, is that you crop everything else out, and it's a really nice portrait, right? When we just look at his face, it's portrait light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing I kind of tend to carry forward. I really like to have my dancers' faces still lit really nicely.
Right.
Or really making a conscious decision that we don't care.
Yeah.
Right. But I really like keeping it so, and finding the way to get really, really pretty portrait light on their face while still getting the kind of lighting we want for the rest of the body.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
That's very nice.
So the far wall in my studio is like a light gray. So there's a little bit of fill that's coming from the return, so it doesn't go completely dark. But this is essentially a 2-light setup, right? There's no fill coming in from the camera. It's just the 2 lights off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
And his name's Colby Foss. He's a principal with I think it's principal. I always get all the titles wrong with Charlotte Ballet. And he's a friend of Amanda Tipton, who's also part of Pas de Deux. And she knew him from when he danced out in Colorado. And she says, "You need to meet Colby, because like he just like floats in the air and you have all day to take the picture.
Right.
And yeah, he's a fantastic human being. We had a fantastic day just shooting. And sort of the funny story was he comes with this massive bag of clothes and all this stuff. And we shot pretty much the whole day in these shorts.
Exactly.
Right. You know, and it was just like, oh, let's do this. Let's do this. Like, you know, and he'd be like, do you mind if I don't change it? I'd be like, I don't care, you know. And yeah, so we have like this really great portfolio of just shots in the shorts. And we did some stuff for Pride, and we did some stuff for Halloween near the end. But you know, there's probably about 30 pictures in the whole portfolio of just different stuff.
Right. And your images of him, this one came in at 8th place. And then we also have another shot of him here that this is him again. And this is,
Yep.
This one came in 9th. And we also have a third image of him that came in the top 20.
No, that's not him.
Oh, that's a different person? Okay.
Black and white's a different fellow.
Okay. Let's talk about this one now.
I love this picture, not just because it's one of those like impossible shots. And no, there's no box or anything that's been photoshopped out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, aside from the typical cleanup that I do just in Photoshop for skin and stuff like that.
Sure.
There's no tricks in the shot. I'm actually pretty hardcore about that. I want all my dancers to feel like what they did was real.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't, you know, sort of hold them up and then Photoshop out somebody holding them up kind of thing.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's a famous Whiteside photo that was like his inspiration that he loved. But in that shot, he's like more turned to his side. And what we kind of noticed was like neither of us were like just totally loving the way his feet looked when he was turned to the side, right? When it was the top of his foot. And I just said to him, I said, do you think that like as you pushed up, you could just kind of roll back? And he says, I don't know. I could try. Right. And first shot was really close to this. And then we hit a couple like this where, you know, basically, you know, he's pushing a little higher than horizontal and I'm catching him on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this was one of those, it doesn't hurt to ask. You can say, do you think you can? And he thought he could, and it turned out he could.
Exactly.
Because that foot in profile is absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
The couple shots before where his whole torso was more turned to the side,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the passe was more of an open passe kind of thing. Neither of us were really grooving on the way the foot line looked.
Yeah.
And, you know, this was in some ways way harder to do, but it was the right shot. And had this not played out, we might not have had a keep from this because the other one just wasn't really making us swoon. So
yeah. Well, this is beautiful, and you know, and that's the thing is like I think you have to start somewhere, and then let it take you wherever it takes you to come up with that image that really works. And I think this is a good example of that.
Yeah, back when I was in management, we read a bunch of stuff by a guy named Tom DeMarco. He was like one of the gurus of the 90s on management. And, you know, he talked about like the idea of the mythical man hour and things like that. But he wrote a book called Slack. And the premise of the book, not surprisingly, is that if you want to have innovation in your organization, he's talking about software developers.
Mhm.
Your schedule has to have margin to it. You can't have everybody just working with too little time to get the job done, right? They need to have a little bit of time where they have time to breathe and say, I wonder if I could do it this way.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't have any space in your schedule, you will do it the expedient, dumb way, and never have time to explore maybe a better way.
Right.
And so my sessions also tend to run long because I always want that time to say, I'm not totally loving this leg line, or I'm not totally loving the arm line. I like the idea, but there's something not quite what I love. Okay, well, let's try to figure out how to get this from like to love.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And yeah, so my shoots tend to run long because we look at the pictures as we go and we say, I'm just not loving those arms. Can we go through a Rolodex of arms and just, come here and here and, and let's throw out 20 more arms and see if there's something that feels better.
Yeah. And,
right?
and what's so cool about this, just for example, with those arms is how it mimics, the passe that's happening with his legs, obviously.
And that was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, well, what should I do with my other one? I said, how about we do that? Because it will mimic the passe.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
I think the original one, the arm went straight up and we didn't love it.
Yep.
Plus, it was really hard to get your arm to go straight up and do all that other stuff. Right? It tended to wobble.
Now, here's another image that finished in your top 20.
Yeah, so actually, when we went up for a workshop with Rachel during this mentorship, the 6 of the 7 of us were up in the New York area, and one of the fellows has a studio outside of Philly, and so we went up a day or two early just to hang out and do some shooting together. Mm-hmm. So this is a guy his name's Lloyd Petchy. He's a New York dancer. And so we're in Harry's studio here, and we just broke into little groups. We had a couple dancers that were with us each day, and this one, I think his dance tights are multicolored blue or something like that, which I didn't feel like gelling a whole bunch of stuff and creating a whole blue vibe, so black and white seemed like the right answer here. But yeah, he's got this insane flexibility and really wanted to do something that pushed his limits. And I mean, there's probably about 20 takes on this where he's like, I got better. Yeah, no, I can, and he loved this shot. Okay? He called it a Spider-Man shot. And I don't remember exactly. I mean, clearly there's a light sitting low off the camera right. And I think there might be a second light up high that's just filling in a little bit, and it looks like we put a smoke kicker off the camera left.
Right. Yeah, you got one lighting up that foot back there, which is so necessary.
Yeah, in this studio, there's no return. Right, it's just a lot of black, and so yeah, without the kicker, his back foot would have basically disappeared at the angle.
Yep.
And yeah, we would have been really disturbed looking at that.
So you managed to get the light to just kiss his right cheek and lighten his eyes. How hard was that to line it up or line him up with the lights, one of the two? So you got that, because I think that's a huge part of it. He had, you know, if that light hadn't just kissed that cheek the way that it did, you know, his eyes would have just been lost in shadow, his right eye.
Yeah. So my approach to light is always to move the lights and not move the dancer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And especially at his level, if he has a strike mark on the ground, he's going to be in the same space super reliably. Right. And so, you know, there's a little bit of tweaking of the light and decide like, you know, the camera left side of it side isn't getting enough light, so we need to let's try pulling it around a little bit, or do we need a little bit of fill? You know, it's the nice thing about when you're working with, you know, professionals and pre-professionals a lot, where they're much more patient and much more repeatable.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and so it's always like a good day when you have that extra margin, so to speak. You know, you don't have to get it within 3 shots because they're going to lose interest, or you know, this time their head's here and this time their head's here, and it's like, you know, they're innovating while you're trying to move the light to deal with their last innovation. So yeah, he had kind of laser focus, if you can't tell from his just overall expression of this was the shot he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really a question of how low he could bring himself.
Right.
So the angle we honed in on pretty rapidly. We played with the hand positions a couple times, you know, to get the right. One of the things we ended up really liking was that front arm going over the back arm, which was a little backwards from what I thought we would want. But the way it obscures the lower part of his face and ties in with his nose and creates that space for his head to be in. When we saw it that way, we're like, well, yeah, we're doing that.
Yep. Okay, let's move along over to your teen shots now.
Okay.
And we've got a couple of those to take a look at. Just want to see what we have here. This one here is a top 20 image. If I recall correctly, yeah, this is the one that did top 20. Can you talk a little bit about this one before we move into your other 2 images that were number 4 and number 1?
Yeah, so this young man, his name's Julian. He's 15 when we shot this. He's just recently turned 16. And for almost all my shoots, I never want to say all, just because I'm sure there's probably one that we didn't. We generally start with something like low and stretchy. You know, even though they've had plenty of time to warm up, my suspicion is always that the adrenaline for getting into it causes maybe a little less than perfect stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So we always start with something that's really lungy to really make sure those hamstrings and groin muscles and, you know, are really as stretched as they think they are. And 9 times out of 10, they're not. They get down into this and they're like, yeah, man, oh, hold on a second. Let me like, yeah. And it's like, yeah, that's why we do this. And so this was one where we started off with we kind of had the leg line set and started playing with some arms, and this was an idea he had coming in of the arms going in the sort of opposite directions.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the challenge became, you know, because you can tell we are lighting from above, but there's that little kiss of light hitting into his face.
Mm-hmm.
And 99% sure what I did there is that there is a little strobe sitting on a tiny little stand with a 10-degree grid on it. Just putting a little bit of light in there, not creating it. I didn't want it to be the highlight. I just didn't want his nose and face to be totally in shadow. So that light is sitting, 2 stops down, just shining enough to kiss along that nose line so that his face has a little bit of definition.
Yeah. Sometimes we have like beginners watching this webinar who are, like learning dance the way you were 3.5 years ago, and when you see an image like this, for a beginner, you just look at it and say, wow, this looks amazing. But, for those of us who know dance really well, one of the things that, I just want to kind of point out some of the things that work so well in this image. And the first thing is the lines, of his legs. They're just, it's a perfect line there. His arms are also, like opposite of each other, but still very parallel. And the softness of his arms are, the same from one side to the other. His fingers are very soft. And then you've got, this really gorgeous forced arch, over here on this foot here. And then he's really crunching his toes and getting a really good pointed foot, over on the other one. I don't know how hard it was or how much you had to direct him on all of this, but the fact is, when you just see all of this together, it just comes across so amazing.
Well, he worked his buns off to get here. That low position, it kept getting lower as he got a little more warm and a little more warm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was one of those things like where I'm sure if I went back into the archive to look at the raws, his hips were probably a good 3-4 inches higher early on. And you look at it and you go like, I know where there's something really gorgeous here. Okay. And you say, do you think he can get lower? Okay. I said, yeah. And especially with his age, where, he knows where he wants to go, but still, he's still young.
Mm-hmm.
And, you do want to be careful not to make it sound like, oh, what you have right now, it's crap. It'll only be good if you can do this, right? You want to make sure that it's like, what I told him is like, I love what we've got here. I think there's something cooler if we can get down just a little bit lower and then that line goes straight. And, for him, it was like, okay, you threw down the gauntlet, I'm getting there. And like I said, he came up with it with the arm line on there. We had to tweak it a little bit. And I remember, I think the arms actually started more looking kind of barrel full of monkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And said like, I think it's going to look better if you really stretch that arm and keep that upper line, as one solid. And that's where we ended up there. So yeah, I mean, he definitely worked. And what I generally find, just like with with Lloyd's picture, the black and white,
Mm-hmm.
is these really stretchy, grounded things. The dancers can really go nuts trying to get it just the way they want, right? Because they know they're in complete control here.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, I wish that finger was just a little bit big, a little bit higher, a little bit lower. I want to go again.
Right.
Right. They're not up in midair trying to control something. They're not on one foot off balance trying to control something.
Yeah.
And so they know they can get to their physical limit when they're doing stuff like this. And so often these are the ones that I have like the most takes from.
Yep.
Right, where they're really honing in on that's my best. And the one thing I think he wishes that he had on this that he couldn't quite get was that toe all the way to the ground.
Was the what all? Oh, the toe. Yeah.
That toe is sitting like this much off the ground, but he was like, if I
Yeah.
get all the way down and push everything there, he just,
Yeah. I just think that with the angle of the leg, I just don't know how that would be possible though. He'd have to like
well,
lift everything up.
I will bet you if he came back today, he'd have the toe down. Because like that was like one of those things where he was like, I want that.
All right. So this is a kind of an interesting image here. This one was a top 40 image in the teen category. Can you talk a little bit about like what was the inspiration for this with her hair down or her head down? Obviously her hair flying. Talk a little bit about this one here.
So this one, we'd like to thank physics and God for the hair because that's straight out of camera.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and it's the only one that the hair did that in. But of all the jumps, that is the singular coolest hair that she had in all the jumps. This is Chloe, and she's currently a junior in high school.
Wow, great.
And so she kind of wanted to do, she had like an inspiration shot of this like stag jump. And then the progression was figuring out like at what angle her legs really worked. Right. I think the actual inspiration shot was like more square on with the legs really more tucked across, almost like it almost looked like a pas de chat, except that it was one leg going forward and one leg going back instead of coming in from the sides. But with her, like it wasn't really the right angle for her. Right. And so God bless her. I mean, she jumped, a good 6 or 7 that we knew weren't going to be keepers, to see where we liked the leg lines.
Yeah.
And found this spot that we had to move some lights around. This thing is nutty top lit. I mean, there's just it's probably a 3x4 gridded softbox straight over top. And which is always fun to get up there on the boom because I mean it weighs like 80 pounds that you're bench pressing up to the ceiling. But the challenge always with the jumps is just like how many times. And she was already well warmed up when we hit this, and but finding those arm positions and we honed in pretty quick that we kind of liked the second arms, but more in a bird of prey rotation, which then quickly defined that we wanted the head going down. Because the leg lines looked very sort of talon-like, and you just, we both sort of felt very quickly that it had that, sort of raptor sort of feel. And then, like I said, just stupid dumb luck that her hair did this.
Right, exactly. And the beauty of her head being down and in shadow is that it puts all the attention on her hair. When her hair does a little loop like that, that's really crazy cool.
Right. And so this was one, like, even in the shots before, we were never sitting there saying like, oh, you don't have portrait light on your face. We I need portrait light. It was like, yeah, no, this isn't that shot. All right.
Yep. Okay, now we're going to come to this one here. This is our 4th place image in the teen category. And who is the dancer here?
So this is Olivia. She's a sophomore in high
Mhm.
school. So one thing about Greensboro is the Greensboro High Point area is, or it still is, but it was like the furniture capital of the world.
Mhm.
Okay, it's where Thomasville Furniture and where Rooms to Go got its start, and Ashley is still headquartered here, and there's just all these furniture companies, right? And so the International Society of Furniture Designers is also headquartered out of High Point. And annually they have a furniture design competition called Innovation in Design. And last year was the first year I had heard about it. And but 2 years ago, they started adding in a photography competition along with it. And so there's like 50 or 60 finalist pieces of furniture. And there are all sorts of stuff. Some of them are tables, and some are like just little tchotchke things, and some are, this is a lamp. And so they sent out a call for photographers. And the instructions are: interpret the furniture in an interesting way. And it's a People's Choice Award thing. There's like there's a not for nothing check at the end of the day, but I joke that like for getting 40 or 50 pictures of furniture, it's really cheap for them, because like they're paying like 10 bucks a piece.
Right.
But as soon as I saw this lamp on the catalog, I said, okay. And basically every day, some furniture would roll into the warehouse, and it'd be like, oh, lamp's not there, not going down today. Right? Just waiting for this lamp to show up. And I told the guy running, I said, the morning that lamp shows up, I will be down to the warehouse to get it, because I am shooting that lamp. And so I told Olivia about the lamp and said, hey, well, really, I talked to Olivia's parents first. And said, if I want to do this project, can you check with Olivia? And she was like, absolutely, this sounds like fun, right? So that lamp it's full size, of how big the lamp is. It's about 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Barely fit in my car. And so we just started playing with it. And we've got one of her up in a really nice little susu with her arms up in a little cross, sort of echoing the shape of it, giving it a little side eye that was really cute. And then we did some ones where it was like leaning at an angle, and she was like behind it or in front of it, playing with it. And then I had sort of an idea in my mind of her more performing the role of like a support for it. And he said, not to objectify you, but I kind of want you to be an object now. And I said, are you game? And she's like, yeah, let's play with this. And so we played through a bunch of different like leg lines, arm lines, and ended up here. And the lamp is actually supported on a little stack of Apple boxes to the side that had to be photoshopped out. So this is one of those cases where there is let's like bend in reality of what's real and what's not real. But I didn't want to suspend the lamp out of fear that like the suspension would not hold. And the boxes were much more stable. So so the lamp is lit on its own, but there's also a pair of strip boxes running above this, behind the lamp, kind of coming in at an angle that is giving all that gorgeous light on her. The lamp itself is effectively not lighting her at all. It's just not that bright. I mean,
Right.
this is like shot at f8, and so the lamp is just bright enough to meet her as the lamp. And there's probably like a little bit of light on her hands that's from the lamp, but all the light on her face and everything else is pretty much from the strip boxes,
Yeah.
which were gelled orange to match the light that was there, so that there's nice color harmony of light that is coming from the lamp and the light from the strip boxes. Otherwise, you would have had some like weird blue orange color shifts from the two. And otherwise, it's a fairly simple shot.
Mhm.
And that, like I said, the strip boxes are upstaged by a foot or so and angled back a little bit, right? So that you can kind of tell the light along the top of the lamp,
Mhm.
where the wood is lit, and that's because of the strips. But we wanted, back to premise one, we wanted her to look really good. And so consequently, get her leg muscles in particular, and just have really sweet light on her face.
And
so
I love the choice even of the Leo color, that it's this is all like just a very muted sort of like color scheme here, and even the Leo works in, even her hair color works in with this,
Yeah, we actually shifted the color on her Leo just a little bit because the Leo was a little closer to her skin tone.
Okay.
And when big like this, it was fine. But like when you just saw it like as a thumbnail, it really averaged out to her skin tone really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were really concerned about like how it would look on Instagram, how it would look as a thumbnail.
Yep.
And so we shifted the color a little bit away from the more skin toned color that it was originally.
Yep. Very cool. Let's go now to your category winner, and that is this image here. Oops. I will say that when we opened up our gallery of all the top 15 images in each category, and we had the metal print of this one out, so many photographers were just standing around just analyzing this image much more so than any other image. They just really loved everything you did with this, from the lighting, from her pose, and the lines that that you guys went with. This just was really the most popular image in our gallery.
You have no idea how much I appreciate that. I mean, not just from you, but from everybody. This was one of those images that the shutter clicks and it comes up on your screen, and you go, "We're done." And I still get like, you get the little chills in your spine, the little hair stand up on your arms, and you said, "We just created something really special."
Yeah.
And we worked this a lot, this hinge, and finding a set of arm positions that we really liked, and getting that lower arm
Mm-hmm.
was a lot. A little lower, it doesn't track back up into the thigh line. A little higher, there was a really narrow spot where it really looked good.
Right.
This young lady's name's Jillian. She graduated graduated last year from UNC School of the Arts, and is in Delaware currently. And she, she's an amazing dancer, and and has this amazing work ethic of, she kind of knew what was possible here after the first couple shots as we started to hone in on this, and wasn't going to give up with anything short of amazing for herself.
Right.
And just getting everything, pushed down, getting the releve on the front foot, poker straight. There's plenty there where, like, okay, yeah, we got this, but then we lost the releve. Oh, we got this, and but the back foot's not as pressed. And so there was a lot of sort of design work that went into getting the structure set up. The lighting on it is, there's somebody asked me about this, and how I initially remembered it wasn't correct, and then I had to correct myself when I talked to her.
This looks like a single light source.
It is. So there's I'm trying to remember whether there's a grid on it or not, but it's a 1x4. I really love my script boxes. Because they don't spill as much, right? And so, but it's off at, this image is flipped from the way we shot it. It was the other way around. It just reads better as a photo coming in from the left. Then if you flipped it, you would be just kind of coming into her knee as you kind of enter the picture, and it wouldn't sit as well.
Right.
But that was her stronger side. So that's why we flipped it. And yeah, her hair is that long. It's not like stretched or anything. It's just an insane amount of hair. And so the light is at, in this case, camera left up at about 45 degrees.
Right.
And everything else is just drop off. Right. There's enough light that it's coming all the way across her stomach and then hitting the back of the legs. The light is sitting a little bit upstage from her. And there might have been a fill that was like 2 or 3 stops down. That part I don't fully remember. But just looking at a few things, I think there's just a little bit of fill in there, but it's really minimal.
Yeah. But just, you already mentioned this, but just the way you lit her lower arm, so, in her hand, so it's not lost into her thigh. I think that's part, and then you just see her whole lower body with that same, very soft lighting. This image is just something that you can just look at for a long time and just admire.
Yeah, this was one of those ones where I had a mom whose daughter's all classical all the time, and she said, when I saw this picture, I knew you were the right photographer for us.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of funny in a sense, because this is so not classical, right? But she was just really taken by everything about the photo, and she said, this is somebody who I want to photograph my daughter.
Yeah.
Which it's probably got more skin on it than most of my photos. And I was a little worried about that when I put it up. I was sort of waiting for people to say what the heck, and it wasn't that way. And I was like,
no, there's no need for it, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong wrong going on, but you just sort of always, worry like when it is that, like how people will react to it. She's
Yeah.
not wearing a tutu.
Yeah. So were you watching the competition results on Instagram Live? Is that what you were doing, or did you just find out about it later?
No, my wife and I we're streaming it onto the TV.
That's awesome. But was it kind of fun to watch the, like the whole thing? 'Cause that took quite a while to play out.
Yeah, it was. The downside of my strategy of streaming from my phone was all the sidebar conversation that was happening with other friends, like on WhatsApp and stuff, would keep shutting down the streaming. I was like, I can't talk, because it takes a hot second to resync. I didn't have two devices to be like live chatting with people while it was going on. So
right. So were you expecting this to be your highest placing image? In other words, when you saw the one become in fourth place, were you saying to yourself, okay, this one's still alive, it's got a good chance?
No, actually. So funny story. I mean, this picture also went into IPC, with Professional Photographers of America, and it earned a merit, but it was not viewed as like, oh wow,
right.
And so when the other one, was announced as fourth, my wife like squeals and I like squeal a little bit too, and we're like, that's awesome, right? And it's like, okay, let's see who got 3, 2, and 1, right? And so it wasn't even remotely like, I wonder who's going to get first. And it was not like, I hope I get first. It was just like, I can't wait to see what the first place image is. And like, when this popped up, it was like, it took a hot second.
Well, that's cool. Now, what was it like to experience it, like that, to learn that you were a category winner?
It made me really wish I had been there, like just because like it's a much different energy. The massive hug from my wife was really cool, but but the so I mean, I regret not being there for that part of it, but it was it's one of those things you still process, that there's so much talent in this group. And so that's like you said, like when people really love the picture and are like looking at it, and for the judges and the jury to have liked it, means so much, because it's not, there's nothing foregone about anything.
Right.
Where you sit there and go like, well, duh, this was the first place. Did you see the second place? It's like, I would have left the competition a happy man with the fourth place shot.
Right.
Right. And felt like, I'm so glad they loved that.
Yep.
And I would have respected the heck out of the third, second, and first place shots, because I think the jury did a really great job of sorting things, like across the board. And had they picked something else, I think I could have easily said, that's an amazing shot. I totally get why that's the number one.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't sit there scratching my head wondering like, how's that number 2? And that other one was number 7, kind of thing. I think y'all probably had more devil of a time going first, second, first, because there's so much talent here.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that you pulled it together. Because, and I'm reaping the benefit of niching down into this while Pas de Deux exists. Okay, it'd be so much harder without it.
Yep.
And so I'm grateful for it, and to have an image that placed it all, let alone took top position, it is just amazing.
Yeah. Did you hear from many friends, once it was announced? Was your, like people at the conference, like texting you, some of your friends that were here, that were at the conference?
Yeah, I had a couple of video chats. Anna took me on a video tour of like showing me around the gallery, and several people sent short little videos of like where they found my pictures and stuff, and but yeah, it was really sweet that people took time out from their time there to give me that. And I think it's one of the things that speaks to the people that are involved, that it's really a good bunch of people.
Yep.
And we all kind of know, we all know how hard it is,
Yeah,
to do this work, but we also kind of know how important it is as well to do this kind of work, because there's plenty of stuff out there that's not good and not reinforcing the artistry and power of the dancers. And so when we have that opportunity to help them see themselves in their best light, to give them the success of creating the image that they've always dreamed of, it's like, okay, it's good to get paid, so I'm not eating ramen, but it's like, what better feeling?
yes. And you talk about like how there's like images that aren't necessarily up to the standard that it should be. And I think it's because, up until, the last few years, there really wasn't a community, and it wasn't really a group that could help each other grow, and but we have that now. And I think the more that people will continue to be a part of our community, the better the genre of dance photography will continue to get.
Yeah, I mean, I had a really sweet call with a colleague of mine. I won't say anything of where they're located geographically or anything, but they're a senior photographer. And she says, "Do you got a minute?" And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" She says, I had a high school senior. She was reliving my 5 year ago
Right.
scenario, but worse.
Yeah.
She had done what she thought was an amazing job with this young dancer, right? She wanted a couple shots in her tutu on the city street thing, right? And they were beautiful portraits of a dancer who is rather good, whose feet and legs were not great.
Right.
And she said, like, she did the reveal for the sales session, and she's like, I love this, and like after they got to the dance portion, she says, do you have the rest of the pictures that we took? Because like my knee's not fully extended in this one and this one, and I don't really like my feet in this one. And she didn't have one that was really great. And so she was going to reshoot, but she says, what do I do? And I said, well, shy of learning what you need to know before you shoot, be nuts about letting her see the back of the camera.
Yes.
I said, just let her see and help her as much as you can. But you're also not going to have developed exactly what she needs to fix, but let her at least know that she needs to change something, because she doesn't like the way her foot looks, or, she's not doing something right. I said, I don't envy you that problem, but so we looked at some of the pictures and I gave her some feedback on what she might have changed for them. But she said it went pretty well. She did let her see, click, click, click. Okay, let's look at these three. Okay, let's try this. Let's try this, and end up getting her the pictures that she needed. But yeah, it was that same horrible experience of, well, you're a dancer. We're like, how hard could this be?
Right.
You know how to do it, right? You're good. So you're just gonna hit a good dance pose, right? And you find out no, it just doesn't happen.
No, and they have to be able to make corrections, and it's kind of hard, when you're a senior portrait photographer, because you may show them a couple of images at the beginning of the session just to give them the confidence that, okay, these are going to look great, but you don't stop and show them all the images, because it just kind of breaks the mood. It kind of breaks the whole flow that you get going. But with dance, you don't just show them every now and then, you show them every time, because they may see something in there that you don't see. Even with us as experienced dance photographers, we're still going to show it to them, and then that way they have the ability to make the correction right there on the spot.
Yeah, and and there's two bad aspects of human nature that are working against you, right? You don't introduce yourself hey, I'm Andrew. I'm so glad you're here for your senior pictures. Just so you know, I have no clue about dance whatsoever. And for this to look good, you're going to have to really figure out a whole lot of stuff, right? So we don't lead with that. And quite frankly, when I had my first dancer, I didn't know to lead with that, right? And dancers are largely trained to accept somebody from an authority position when they say,
yes,
that's good. Well, you must mean it.
Right.
Right? They're not going to say, do you actually know a plie from a releve? Then what is your definition of good, sir? Right?
Exactly.
Right. So, you as the professional photographer, they're not thinking well, you don't know what you don't know. And oh, these are great. They kind of take you at face value. They don't really think to question you as not having the credentials to define good.
Yep.
And then they see the pictures and go, So yeah, having this group and having sort of defining dance photography. I mean, it still bugs me. I've asked them a couple times, it hasn't changed. There actually is not a category under PPA for dance photography.
Right.
They've got their little find a photographer thing, and they have equestrian photographer as a specialty. They still do not have a dance photography as a specialty there.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe someday soon they'll realize that, yes, that too is a specialty, every bit as much as horses. That, you just don't pick up a camera and take pictures of dancers.
No, not at all.
And yeah, and 5-6 years ago, it wouldn't even have dawned on me, not having worked with dancers, that how much of a disservice we can do by doing it poorly.
Right.
you know, and I mean, that's been what's like driven me so hard through this whole process is there, there's much more of a downside of doing it poorly than like, oh, yeah, you know, well, the shot with the azaleas didn't work out, right? It's, you know, when you can't get the shot with them, or you can't get a good shot with them,
Mm-hmm.
there's that little seed of doubt that you just planted in the back of their mind of maybe I can,
Yeah.
right? I like when something doesn't come together, I like just totally own it. It's like, it is not you. This is, I don't know why I can't, you know, even if it is them, right? It's like, you know, this is all on me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you for a second think that you're not pulling this off. It's just the way this is working here in this, you know, this time, in this place, in this light, it's just not working, right? Because they've got enough voices of doubt in their life. They don't need some photographer to make them doubt themselves.
Yep. I you know, along the same line, I just tell them, okay, great, we got it, let's move on. You know, and you know, when I know that it's not going to work, you know, there are so many times where it just, you know, and you've given us a couple of really great examples today about how you have to go the extra few steps to really get this amazing picture. But there are other times where, you know, and sometimes it's the dancer attempting to do something that they actually haven't, you know, perfected yet. They haven't even necessarily trained that much on, but they think, oh, it's a photo shoot. I should do something beyond my means. And it's like, no, let's stick to what you're good at, you know?
I'll tell you two stories. I'll share a picture on one of them.
Okay.
So one of them was a dancer. She had an inspiration image of one of those massive back bends, right? Like the inspiration image, like the dancer was like almost on her tummy, and then like her torso is like shooting straight to the ceiling. Her arms are like both up off the ground, right? Her back is like bent backwards at like at a 90-degree angle. And she's like, I love this image. I said, yeah, man, it's gorgeous. I said, do you have that kind of mobility in your back? She goes, oh, I'm really flexible. Right. And like 2 shots in, like, and she's like, it's like, yeah, no, you know, we both laughed that she might have oversold herself on her own flexibility of her lower back.
Right.
Yeah, we moved on and everything was great. And this other dancer, you know, it's a little counter to your point of like the stay with what you know. She was wanting to do something different. And I said, well, if you ever done like, you know, she wanted to do something that was like, you know, more contemporary. And I said, well, have you ever done, you know, sort of like the sea lift, you know, coming back off your, you know, from a kneel and standing up? She says, no, how do you do this? And I said, well, I can show you how not to do it, and I'll explain the theory because I can't get my massive body off the ground doing it, right? And she's like, okay, and like, you know, for literally first attempt, you know, she's, you know, gets her knees about like that far off the ground, you know, and then next one's a little bit more, and she's kind of figuring it out. And we ended up with this shot. So she had never done this before, and she pulled this off.
Oh, yes.
Right. And again, the little hair that just did like something totally exactly right for us is like, thank you. She is super proud of that.
She should be.
Right. She had never done that ever. Not horsing around, not with her friends, you know. She figured it out here at the studio and pulled off something that she was really proud of.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you say, okay, mission accomplished, you know, she felt better about herself as a dancer. at the end of the day, because she felt like, there's things that maybe I just think I can't do. And true story, she came back because she needed one more audition shot, because there was a summer intensive she was not going to apply to because she didn't think she was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And she needed a fourth quasi for that application. So she came back, we knocked off her fourth quasi, she applied and got in.
Yep, that's awesome.
Right? Sort of all snowball from, I had a photo shoot. I felt more confident afterwards. And my confidence just got validated because I got into a intensive that I didn't think I was good enough. But they chose to disagree with my self-assessment and say, no, you are good enough.
Very good.
So.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew, for doing this. This was a kind of a fun journey with you. It's fun hearing your stories and going through the process of how you created these images. So thank you for being a part of this.
Well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the other ones of these.
All righty.
And now you just have to cut this down to what, 3 minutes?
Exactly.